those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting just yet, my name is Maddy Dahl. I'm excited this time around to be able to showcase some of the features within Viva. So for those of you who aren't aware of what Viva is capable of and what we can do with Viva, that's why I'm here to be able to start to showcase some of those. I believe it's one of the hidden gems of the Microsoft capabilities, and so hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to say the same. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn my camera off for this part of it, but wanted to be able to introduce myself and say hello. For those of you, again, that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Maddy Dahl. I am a consultant focused on modern workplace specifically. I do have the Microsoft Certified Trainer and MVP statuses, recently named the Microsoft Most Valuable Professional for Copilot and Microsoft 365 as those award areas. I'm really thrilled to be a part of that community. And so if you have any tips and tricks as we start to get further integrated there, please let me know. I am, on a personal note, the proud owner of my little mini Labradoodle puppy. I say little and mini intentionally, knowing that Labradoodle can mean a lot of different things. And so she might introduce herself at some point as well, because she likes to say hello to the neighborhood. So my apologies in advance for that. I'm also a boy mom, new mom. If I can still say that, he's about 9 months old. He's my best little friend. So definitely a lot of fun. But my slogan on a professional note is no user left behind. My passion is for end user training. Training and enablement is a lot of what I focus on at my company at RSM, which is one of the sponsors at our session a few weeks back. And I do a lot with teaching end users and working with organizations on explaining to end users the why, and really emphasizing why it's important to communicate with end users as we look to really guide them through change management and ensure that end users understand the importance of that change and change that from a resistor to a power user or champion user for that product specifically. On the right-hand side, there's also a couple of additional ways to stay in touch with me. I'll link those at the end of today's presentation too. But we are in a PowerPoint Live session as well, and I use PowerPoint Live intentionally for us today so that if you are seeing any links throughout this presentation, you can actually go ahead and just click on it on your screen and on your slide. So every Tuesday, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I do a Tech Tip Tuesday, and so I absolutely love this tip as maybe your premature Tech Tip Monday. But this tip is definitely one that helps for sharing out links, as well as if English by chance isn't your first language, highly recommend clicking on the More Actions button, which you should be seeing next to the slides count. And if you click on those More Actions, you'll see the ability to translate the slides. So if it would be preferred to be in a different language, go ahead and check that out. All right. So there's kind of some of my housekeeping items. In addition, I would also just like to call out that for today's session, if you have any questions throughout, I'm happy to make this an engaging session. So if you have any questions, please use the raise hands feature in Microsoft Teams. The chat, I'll have that open, as well as coming off mute as you feel comfortable. I also will have a variety of slides and demo formats for us today. So hopefully that'll keep us all engaged through our 60-minute session. But for our table of contents, just to give us an idea of what we're planning to cover, there's a lot within Viva, if I haven't said that already, and we'll get a look at that in a moment. But the 4 primary areas of Viva that I plan to highlight for us is Viva Connections, Viva Learning, Viva Insights, and then Viva Engage. Some bonus content because I was recently named the MVP in Copilot, have to include Copilot and Viva, of course. So we've got a little bit of content to understand what some of those capabilities might look like too. All right, so what is Viva? Microsoft Viva is an employee experience platform. So when we're looking at all of these different tools, connections, amplify, pulse, topics, sales, which I would almost say is a different, is kind of in its own category, learning, goals, insights, and engage. All of these tools enhance different aspects of the employee experience. So as a whole, when we look at all of these different tools and all of these different modules, if you will, they aim to keep your employees connected, to be informed, to learn new skills, and to balance the work-life balance, and make sure that we're better maximizing our time in all of those different areas. And so as we guide through all of these different 4 categories, specifically as I had noted, Viva Connections up here at the top, my little laser pointer being another incentive to using PowerPoint Live, as well as Viva Learning, Viva Insights, and Viva Engage being this last one here. So all 4 of those different categories are really emphasizing those key themes of connection for your employees, being informed, learning new skills, and then that work-life balance, especially seen in Insights. So I know that this is a lot of text on this slide in terms of the introduction of what Viva is capable of across these different platforms, but this is really more for, in the case you want to screenshot this or anything like that, just to give you some ideas of what Viva is capable of across the different suites. So especially thinking those tools that we're not covering today. So what can Amplify do? What can Goals do? What can Glint and Pulse and some of those other tool sets? So definitely some food for thought there. And then with that, let's go ahead and jump in to our first highlight. So when we think about Viva Connections is really all about connectivity, right? So it's connecting your information, your resources, and your support to your employees. So across the right-hand side, you can see this screenshot, which we'll also look into this a little bit further in a demo. But you can see this screenshot here for us that kind of showcases the Viva Connections dashboard. Initially, when we were pushing Viva Connections out to organizations, the thing that we were seeing the biggest push for Viva Connections as was really to pull in a SharePoint intranet to your Microsoft Teams. And you can actually see for Viva Connections across the left-hand side of this screenshot here, you can see the Microsoft Teams navigation pane. And so that navigation pane across the left-hand side allows us to access Viva Insights or Viva Connections, pardon me, as well as that SharePoint intranet, because we're able to connect your SharePoint intranet to Viva Connections and then access it through Microsoft Teams. So we'll be able to see that a little bit in the demo. But that was really that primary use case of why we were pushing that out to most organizations and their employees. They were looking to take that fancy new SharePoint intranet and integrate it into the application that many of us call the one-stop shop, because we're accessing Microsoft Teams for everything else, right? One of the main themes of Microsoft Teams is integration. And that integration that we're seeing of SharePoint, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of these different Microsoft tools, even our files with OneDrive, and then the SharePoint backbone in Microsoft Teams. So all these different ways in which we're accessing the primary tools that we need to access without leaving the Microsoft Teams application. Then we also needed to bridge the gap between our SharePoint intranet and Microsoft Teams, right? To be able to further drive traffic, further communicate information, and further provide support with all the things that we already had included on there. So the key things that we're seeing Viva Connections be used for as well now, in addition to connecting that SharePoint intranet or that main SharePoint page, is also this personalized dashboard. So we've seen this kind of continue to be built out and be more of a hub and a main space for some organizations to be using, where they're applying their corporate branding, they're integrating their third-party applications, and they're able to pick and choose what applications and what items are most applicable for their employees, in addition to that SharePoint intranet or that SharePoint page, to be stored and primarily driven and drive traffic using that dashboard. And that's really where those other key items listed on this slide of being informed and then streamlining and centralizing that information comes into play. There's a couple little tips that I'm dubbing my Maddy's magic, is that of Microsoft or the Viva tools across today's presentation, but integrating it in Microsoft Teams, that's the primary use of Viva Connections, is that integration. And then, of course, the tailored experiences. So making sure that on your dashboard as an admin, you have that ability to adjust the tiles that are being seen or shown on this dashboard to be more applicable, so that you're continuing to drive value for those end users. And again, my passion and heart for end users is shown in there. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump in to our demo of Viva Connections here for us. And so we'll see that come across the screen in just a moment, but I'll go ahead and pause in the case that there's any questions as well. All right, so then we'll go ahead and share out my screen. And again, a perk of having multiple monitors is not only because I can have lots of information on my screen at once, but also because one of those screens can house all of your questions while I still showcase some of this information here. So on my screen, we've got the Microsoft Teams interface, and I am in the browser. Forgive me, because I can certainly try to switch over, but force of habit, I'm still getting used to my multiple profiles in Microsoft Teams and being able to use those at the same time. You'd think it'd be an easier habit to break, but here we are. So we've got my browser version of Microsoft Teams open here for us. Benefit, however, is that everything, if you choose to follow along and see if this is a tool that's accessible for you today, it should be a almost identical experience. So on here, you can see across the left-hand side, I can search for Viva Connections by clicking on my search for more apps across the left, or that ellipsis there, and I can go ahead and search for Viva Connections. Now, if you're like me, and when I go to search for Viva Connections, it's not showing up, that might be because your organization is in the process of renaming that Viva Connections application to be more applicable for your organization specifically. So for my organization and for this demo, we have it named the home site, because this is intended to be one that we will pin. In this case, I'll go ahead and pin it. And many organizations have started pinning it across the top as something to keep top of mind. So in this case, I've got my pinned home site now up at the top. And when I look at Viva Connections, this is where we're starting to see this dashboard. So I've got my Viva Connections dashboard, those key pieces of information. These items are all SharePoint news articles that have been added to the top here. So training requirements and training fall kickoff and a SharePoint overview. Some of that key information my organization is pushing out to say this is what's most important and what I want highlighted at the top of this dashboard page. I can also see across the bottom, or more in the middle now here, I have a further dashboard of assigned tasks, some events that are coming up, Viva Learning, approvals, system update announcement, and some card designer and some information that I might have included here, all to say that this is an example of what that could look like and some of the pieces that are included there. Now, as we continue to move through the demo and some of my slides today, there are really three key themes across Microsoft that I've started to identify, and Michelle and Don, being my Microsoft employees that are on here, they can correct me if I'm wrong. But as I have demoed the Microsoft Suite across or over the last few years, there are really three key themes that I've started to identify across Microsoft. And the first is integration. So when we're really looking across the Microsoft Suite, and especially Viva as well, or Viva being no exception, the integration of these tools, we start to see them almost nested within each other. So for Microsoft Teams, as an example, we have Viva nested within it through Viva Connections. It's an integration. Within Viva Connections, we have Viva Learning. Within Viva Connections, we have Microsoft To Do and Planner, the tasks by To Do, kind of linked in here. And then within Microsoft Teams, we also have OneDrive and all those other applications. So integration is really that first theme. The second theme that we started to notice, or that I started to notice, which some of you might laugh when I say this, is standardization. When I have started to demo the Microsoft applications, I've started to notice a standardization in the way that you can navigate this application or many of the applications, and that's through that navigation pane across the left-hand side. So when we toggle over to my 365.com landing page, I can see that navigation pane across the left. You'll see it in SharePoint, and you'll see it in OneDrive and a variety of those other applications, a similar navigation pane type style. And really, within that navigation pane, it's highlighting what are the core applications and the core items that I'm likely to be looking for when I am using this application. So for Microsoft Teams, those primary applications or notifications by default that I'm looking at are activity, chat, Teams, calendar, calls, and files, now OneDrive. And with our organization and the admin privileges that we might have, that's where we can also say the most important application is also Viva Connections. Now, the third theme, which we'll point out within Viva Connections, is also customization and personalization. So customization and personalization of each of the different Microsoft applications. It's intended to be more of a tailored experience for us. So we can see the edit button here, the ability to customize some of these different spaces for me to say what's really relevant for me and how do I tailor this environment to actually be something that I'm going to utilize. So that ability to start editing and updating and customizing these different spaces to make sure that it is relevant and useful, making sure that we're enhancing our efficiencies. So then across the bottom, this last area is that resources section. So in addition to some of these dashboard pieces and the key tiles up across the top is also additional linked resources where maybe they don't need the giant logo or the giant tile, but perhaps I still want the link to that resource there. And then across the very bottom is where we can start to explore more of the Viva applications. Now, for most organizations, I will note from a license perspective that Viva Connections is one of the tools that is available to us with a Microsoft Teams license. So when we have Viva Connections, that's where we can start to integrate that in. And then across the right-hand side, this is where, and it's a pretty faint logo, but this is where we can also click on the RSM logo, which is linking me to the SharePoint intranet that I have access to here. All right. Now I know when it comes to introducing a lot of the Microsoft applications, sometimes it can feel like drinking from the fire hose. So please let me know if there are any questions throughout. Happy to pause and adjust pacing as needed to be able to make sure that we're capturing everything that we need to have this be helpful as an introduction to these tools for each of you. All right. Well, then what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and switch back over to the Viva Learning and back over to my slides to be able to showcase some of the capabilities of Viva Learning before we jump back over to that demo there. All right. So now we're back into Viva Learning. Viva Learning is one of the tools that I also have found great value in, because many of us and many organizations are trying to find out what tools we can use to continue to prioritize continued learning for our organization, for our employees. And the fact that, once again, this is one of those tools that links directly into Microsoft Teams, it alleviates the need for an external sourced LMS. And many of you might think that, well, Microsoft is replacing my existing LMS or trying to be the one for one with my LMS, when there's actually some analytics and additional reporting and things that are capable, or additional capabilities of my LMS, that aren't found in some of the capabilities within LinkedIn, for example, which is one of the of course linked platforms within Viva Learning. And if that's you, the good news is, as a part of my Maddy's magic note there across the bottom, is that we can connect an LMS to the Viva Learning platform. So as an example, Pluralsight, which is a pretty popular learning management system, is available to be linked into the Viva Learning platform. So that's a couple of things to keep in mind, is that you can pull in some of those known third-party or prominent third-party applications directly into Viva Learning to make it so that it's not so much a substitution, but instead a tool that can come alongside you in what you're already trying to accomplish, but make it that much easier for our employees to start to access. And in addition to the ease of accessibility by linking it into Microsoft Teams, we also have the ability to curate academies, which is that second little magic piece there. So curating academies is something where we will see in the demo of what that kind of looks like, but an academy is essentially a learning path that we also have the ability to connect and recommend to other people in our environment, to assign to specific groups of users, to say that this is really your onboarding experience, for example, which is what one organization has been, that I've been working with, that has been starting to build out, is what are some of the ways in which we can streamline our onboarding process to assign users their required content that they need to watch, and a variety of assignments through an academy type experience, which is particularly helpful for organizations that might be a hybrid type work environment. How do we make this compatible for employees that are even completely virtual? So taking that onboarding experience and curating it with that academy type learning. The other piece that I like to highlight about Viva Learning is also the capabilities that you have to continue to share information across your company. So when we think about making learning fun, it's really about continuing to promote these different platforms and promote the different learning paths with each other and with employees in your organization. So being able to share some of these different learning paths is also a feature within Viva Learning. To be able to take that, share it, and send it directly in Microsoft Teams to say, hey, check out this inclusivity or this accessibility learning path, and being able to share different pieces of information in that way. Another thing that we've got noted here is also that personalized learning. So along the same lines of that academy piece, is also the ability to have some targeted suggestions based on the interests that the person who signed in specifies at the time of kind of signing up their profile. And that's what we can see in this little pick your interests category here. So that pick your interest space starts to show us what are some of the things that you're most interested in. And that is actually also something that, as an admin, once again, we have the ability to add additional interests and curate additional information that's in here. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump back over again to show us some of these demo capabilities. and show us what Viva Learning looks like within the Microsoft Teams interface, of course. All right. So now back in the Microsoft Teams interface, we're at our intranet and still within Viva Connections. So then accessing Viva Learning would be, again, going back to that, the ellipsis there across the left, and then maybe typing in Viva, or you can see that it's highlighted right at the top because I've recently accessed it. But if I go ahead and type out Viva, then I can see Viva Learning is incorporated down here. Now, in terms of a license perspective, if you are trying to follow along with me here, Viva Learning is another one that would be included on a basic perspective within an E3 or E5 license. But the additional pro capabilities, if you will, of Viva Learning would be something captured by the Viva license, which the Viva license, as it stands today, for a standard organization would be that $12 a user a month. So when we're looking at Viva Learning, basic capabilities is captured by that E3, E5, which I believe many organizations have. So then with Viva Learning, we can see that home up here across the top. That's where that dashboard view, what we're looking at here, is really capturing. And I can see that in the center here, we have the ability to pick up my progress and continue where I left off. So if you are in the middle of watching a learning path, it continues to retain some of that information for me to be able to just as easily jump back in and see some of that content. I can also look at some recommended content. So this is what that recommended from my network specifically was that I was referencing before. So that's where I can look at what are some of the areas that my colleagues might be recommending. So collaboration, we're looking at some of the areas specifically with Microsoft Teams, with communication and collaboration and the facilitation of it. And I can start to see some of those related courses and as well as some additional courses from Microsoft 365 training. So these are going to be areas that are from Microsoft Learn and Microsoft curated content as a whole, not specific to LinkedIn. If we looked at some of the additional learning paths, which we will in a moment, we'll be able to see some of these other learning management systems and what that looks like as an experience. But when we look at some of that recommended content, this is also that in progress content as well as the bookmarked content. So I appreciate the bookmarked content because there are many times where I will think to myself, oh, that looks really interesting. I want to jump back into it, and I'm going to check that out later on. And then when I come back into this environment, or that other environment that I was looking to learn more about, I will think to myself, well, I have no idea what that specifically was, like, let alone remembering what I had for breakfast. I can't remember what I remember or what I wanted to watch later on. But for this bookmarked category, it remembers it for me. So I have that ability to save that section and save those items to be able to revisit those later on. And this one is a favorite by many organizations as well, is that not only does my organization have the ability to see some of that completed content, but I will be able to personally view my completed content and my completed courses in this space. So I can see what were the courses that I've completed across my organization by clicking on that and being able to access maybe how many hours of content that I've consumed and some of those other personalized analytics there. Any questions on Viva Learning so far?
Looks like we're good, Maddy.
Perfect. All right, then across the left-hand side, we can also jump back over to my dashboard. and I can see the saved interest tile. So then on this saved interest tile, I can see here are some of the areas of interest. And then what will happen is in the same row, I also have um, the, the storage account, the Snow Pro Core, Azure storage account, some of those core items that will be applicable based on my saved interests. Further down the page, I can browse by my specific interest. And then this is what I also appreciate is that not only can I browse by my specific interests I've specified, but I can also say by provider. So if my organization hasn't already configured what areas are most applicable just yet, I'm able to take those providers' spaces and say for providers, only Pluralsight and Microsoft 365 are free. And so those are the only areas that are going to be more applicable for me. So then I can go to see all for the Pluralsight trainings or all of the Microsoft 365 training or Microsoft Learn specifically. I have toggled off LinkedIn specifically, but that's something that, again, you can incorporate back in if your organization or if you as an individual also have LinkedIn as a learning additional license for that. Looking at the academies piece, this is where we can start to see those learning paths by academies and by that view. So when we're looking at the Microsoft Copilot Academy as one example, I have a Copilot license assigned to this account. And so by default, Microsoft has also assigned me the Microsoft Copilot Academy. And within this Copilot Academy, I can see across the bottom, these are those different learning paths. So when we were looking at the Azure Storage learning path that I could have clicked on, that is in essence what this Meet Copilot, Intro to Prompts, Save Time, Create and Transform, what each of those is really highlighting for me. So I can see for Copilot, I have 6 different areas in which I can start to meet Copilot, from starting my chat, additional resources, Copilot and my data, some of the ways in which it has responsible AI policies, and then I can start to see all the way across the right to some additional admin type content. So you can see that for academies, it is also an area that I have all of my information for recommended content curated by you, similar to that home dashboard, but this is all relative specifically to the Copilot Academy. And then from an admin, if we just peek over quick, this is where we can start to see how we can manage providers, managing interests. So if there are additional interests outside of just the default out of the box interests, where we could add that in. We can add in different providers here. So these are those primary third parties that Microsoft is connected with for Open Sesame, Saba Cloud, Skillsoft, Workday. So trying to capture as many of those primary third-party LMS tools that many organizations are using to be able to continue to bridge that gap back into Microsoft Teams as your one-stop shop. The featured set is kind of those pinned content across the top on that home page. And so those are some of those ones that we're incorporating there. The learner records, once again, this is where once we have some additional learning content, we can start to see as an admin some of that primary, those analytics and statistics that would be included here, or just really analytics and trends. So a lot of different ways in which we can start to interact with Viva Learning and understand how we can adjust this to meet the need and to tailor specifically what your organization is looking for. All right, let's jump back over to our presentation then and take a look at Viva Insights. Then our third Viva tool that we're highlighting today is also Viva Insights. Now, Viva Insights, admittedly, of the 4 that we're covering today, is my favorite. So we're not quite saving best for last, but best for third. And so we've got Viva Insights, which is our analytics and insights tool, which also, as it's highlighting here, is also for speeding up your AI transformation, which is our little teaser for some of the Copilot content later on. But when we think about Viva Insights' role in the Viva Suite, as well as within the Microsoft Suite, is our ability to connect that work-life balance and try to assist with that work-life balance, especially in the hybrid work world that we're in. So when we're thinking about some of the different ways in which organizations are using Viva Insights, for some of the clients that I work with, a large part of them either don't know that Viva Insights is being used by users in their organization, or they're using it for small purposes intermittently throughout the organization. So one of the primary examples that we see used is focus time. And focus time is by far one of my favorite tools across the Viva Suite because of the fact that it integrates, again, seeing that theme of integration, integrates into your Outlook calendar to be able to create focus time blocks on your calendar. So if you're like me and you have a lot of meetings any given day, having Microsoft and specifically Viva Insights look at your calendar and say, here are some of the gaps in the day that I want to create a 30-minute or 60-minute hold on my calendar every day for focus time. And that can be anything that you need to use it for. So for me, it might be finally sending out a couple of those emails or working on a deliverable that I've actually promised the client. So a variety of different things that you can use that focus time for, but essentially putting that hold on your calendar to make it so that you have that time to do what you need to do. And the other piece of Viva Insights that I always like to highlight, that is one of the more underrated pieces, is also the virtual commute. The virtual commute is one that I actually found just a couple months ago. And the virtual commute is one that I find very important for my own mental health and transitioning from work to home. Especially since having my son, that's one of those things where I think for each of us, when coming out of the pandemic and becoming more of a hybrid work world or even a completely remote employee, we don't have that commute home anymore. To go from work to get or to be able to drive from the office back home where I could listen to a podcast or listen to the radio and be able to really transition my mind from being at work to now going home. It's an immediate switch, right? That we have to flip. It's I walk out of the office and now I'm mom. And so it's one of those things where the virtual commute allows me to fully sign off, check the boxes that I need to check, and be able to say, yes, some of these things or these primary areas are taken care of. Now I can walk away and be able to make that switch a little bit less harsh, perhaps. So those are some of those primary areas and key tips that I would have as it relates to Viva Insights. And the primary reasons why we also see Microsoft encouraging the use of Viva Insights is for building better teams, identifying some of those work patterns, and the work-life balance piece of it. And we'll get to see again some of those trends and some of those insights that Viva captures through some of those different ways in which you can interact with Viva Insights. So I'll go ahead and open it up to my demo here, and we can again start to look through the pretty robust platform actually that Viva Insights is, and just how many different things that you can do within Viva Insights specifically. All right, so then on my screen, you can see I've got my Viva Insights or my Microsoft Teams window back open, and we've got Viva Learning. Accessing Viva Insights is then across the left-hand side when searching for an app. I'll search for my Viva. I can see Viva Insights is linked here. I'll go ahead and click on it. And now for Viva Insights, this is where, as it starts to populate, we'll see the Microsoft Copilot dashboard. Again, our little teaser. But across the Viva platform, you'll notice almost every single one has that home associated with it. So that dashboard type appearance. And so for my home, it's some of that primary recommended content. And then across the bottom, inspiration library, as well as some of the progress that I have on some of those items that I've already started to address with Viva Insights. The four primary categories, or really three primary categories that we see in Viva Insights, is well-being, productivity, and teamwork. And so when we look at the well-being tab, we can see that this is really for you and the well-being that you can make primarily for you. So when we're talking about taking action to improve your well-being, the suggestion of setting quiet time, or suggesting scheduling a team no meeting day plan. So a couple of different ways in which we can do that. And one thing that I'll note is that for these different tiles and these recommendations, they do adjust based on your role in your organization. So what I've noticed with Viva is that since I have recently added myself and within this demo environment, added individuals underneath me to become my employees under me in my team, I've started to notice an adjustment in some of these different tabs as suggestions for connecting with my team, recognizing that I'm a team leader. And so some of those suggestions have started to pop up here. So then with well-being, in addition to that quiet time and no meeting day, I can toggle over to see my virtual commute, which is one of those favorite ones that I have. So if I could click on set reminders there, making time for messages, making time for learning. So this is all where we can start to schedule breaks and set aside time for that given category and given item that we're looking to devote more time to. Across the bottom is also this track your progress. So scheduling emails for later, that's actually a feature built into Viva Insights. So in case you didn't realize that schedule send option within your Outlook is that Viva Insights recognition as well. That is that integration there. And then focus plan and focus time is where we can start to configure some of our settings. So that's something we'll jump into those settings in a moment. But configuring and adjusting how many days and what days of the week. So depending on if you're a Monday through Friday employee or a Wednesday through Sunday or whatever your schedule specifically is, you can choose that. And then the ability to act with intention and reflect on your emotions. So this is one that I wanted to highlight too with this reflect on your emotions, is that these responses are private to you. So within your organization, when we think about actually inputting some of this and actually responding to some of these pieces, many end users might be a little bit apprehensive to actually answer some of these questions when coming into it, which is why I think it was really smart by Microsoft to say, we're going to write right above this space and make sure users know that these responses are private to you. So in no way will these, I'm having a great day or I'm having a really bad day, come back to you specifically. So that won't be something where you will be flagged for instance, if you've had a bad day. And then within our productivity across the left, this is also one that I find really interesting whenever I've clicked into this productivity space for my personal account, because I can see some of those recommended content. So how did my meetings succeed and how I can make my meetings improve. If I were to look at my Viva Insights even within RSM and what that looks like, I might see how many hours specifically I've spent in meetings and what were and what specifically were some of the calls that I've been late to, right? So, meeting category insights, meeting habits of how many meetings did I organize and how long were those meetings. So, a lot of really great ways to start to see those statistics and analytics there. This one is one that I feel particularly called out on of this. You didn't multitask. I am definitely guilty as charged on that one. And in fact, it's actually not even a category on my, but perhaps on my individual one because I am guilty of it far too often. And then this last one primarily is going to be that teamwork piece. And so the teamwork section is where we can start to see the ability to start to manage time with my team. So again, recognizing that these are the individuals on my team. How can I start to schedule those one-on-ones and when was the last one-on-one? So it's some really great insights into your team connectivity and how you are functioning perhaps as a leader. Then in the middle, we've got that ability to build some better relationships and what your communication habits are. So this one, if nothing else, recommend you jump on for the teamwork section and look at that communication habits. How many chats, how many emails, how many meetings. I find that fun to even compare across individuals. What does that chat, email, and meetings look like? So on mine specifically, I have 73.4 hours in meetings over the last 4 weeks. And I'm sure there are individuals on here who are much higher than I. Now, this last one is actually one that is the newest to Viva Insights, and I haven't had the chance to dig into this one too much. But in terms of the meeting cost and quality, I find this to be something that I'm interested in looking at later on of some of those opportunities to free up your time, some additional where the meeting time is going and understanding how are you investing your time as a whole. So I think this one will be one that organizations continue to look for or look to that much more as it gets further built out. All right. Now we'll jump back over to my productivity area, or really my well-being area, because I wanted to showcase some of these settings also. Now this is one way in which I access the settings. You'd also be able to see some of these within the right-hand corner, that ellipsis in the top right to be able to view all recommendations or go to the settings like where I'm at now. And within the settings, this is where we're going to be able to maximize our use of Viva the most. So configuring our work week, adjusting what our working hours are. That's something where I'm sure many of you have also configured within Outlook to say what your working hours are. And then our direct reports, being able to see those direct reports. And this is where you can see that whether you have some of those manager features enabled. So by default, because I do have direct reports, I'm seeing those manager features there. And then this is also praise. So if you haven't seen the praise card or the praise feature used within Microsoft Teams, this is also a tool that's integrated with Viva Insights. So reminding you to send praise and continuing to utilize praise is one that even as a manager, I think if we had more companies that sought to improve company culture through sending praise and encouraging their managers to send out praise on a regular basis, how much more that would improve our capabilities there. And then across the left, we also have the protect time. So then our protect time is where we can start to see the lunch hours that I can configure, the reoccurring plan to focus. So how much time, how many hours perhaps do I want to configure for focus time, whether I want that to be a morning or afternoon, and what those additional capabilities should be. A lot of different options that you have. So focus time, hands down, is one of the top ones I always recommend. Then that virtual commute is also that other piece of marking things off your checklist. So when you walk through a virtual commute, what it will do, and I apologize because I don't have a specific example to show, but when we look at that virtual commute, it will walk you through what tasks did you complete today. Let's go ahead and mark them all as completed. And what were the calendars, or what are the calendar invitations that you have on your calendar for the following day, and what items are you attending? Make sure to RSVP appropriately for those. And then it also goes through a breathing exercise and some of those types of activities. So that virtual commute, for sure, take a look at. All right, we're going to move on now to our final Viva tool for today's presentation, which is last but certainly not least, Viva Engage. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time being able to showcase Viva Engage because it has been revamped a little bit since being dubbed Yammer, since the official name was Yammer. And so within Viva Engage, there is a lot of different integrations and a lot of different pieces of connectivity that we're starting to see Viva Engage being built out as. So first and foremost, it is that ability for us to start creating communities, having conversations and encouraging collaboration. So even in this a screenshot and across the right-hand side, we can see that example of Viva Engage, where we have someone who's posted some pictures and some information. And on an informal note, I would even argue that in some ways, Viva Engage feels a lot like our company social media, right? Depending on the community that you're a part of, it's a way for us to be able to share more informal water cooler type conversations. But in a professional setting, in a professional community, and more maybe structured and robust community, it's also an opportunity for us to be able to create virtual town halls or make announcements at scale or have a leadership corner, which is one of the more new features within Viva Engage as well. So that's a place for us to be able to have centralized discussions. The leaders can also start Q&As, and that's some of the things that we'll be able to showcase in the demo too. Some of the key points, or trips and pardon me, tricks and tips that I would make would be the engagement insights, the SharePoint integration, as well as the fact that Viva Engage is a desktop application. So across the Viva tools that we've discussed today, Viva Engage is one of the ones that does have a desktop application associated with it. So I recommend you have that pinned to your taskbar as an opportunity there too. All right, we'll go ahead and jump into our demo here. So then back into my Microsoft Teams window, we can see I've got my Viva Insights right where we left off. Accessing my Viva Engage now is by clicking on the three little dots to be able to search for Viva, specifically clicking on my Viva Engage tile now. And this is where I can access Viva Engage and start to see some of the communities and people that I follow within my organization. So now within my demo specifically, you can see that in the center section of this area, I can share my thoughts, ideas, or updates. I can open up Copilot, again, teasing us a little bit as to what those capabilities look like within Viva Engage. But then I can also see across the left-hand side that I have the ability to see my profile. So working top to bottom maybe here. I can look at my profile. I can explore those communities that are both in my environment as well as that I am a part of. I can see the leaders in my organization. So who are the people that my admins have dubbed as the leaders in my organization, to be able to take a look at what they have to say about specific items across the organization. So maybe we have a AI champion in my organization, and we also have uh, our HR and human resources, a primary leader, and some of those different people in the organization. Our CEO has a Viva Engage. So we can also go ahead and look at that leadership page and be able to see what they're saying about this. In the storyline section, thinking about storylines similar to the ability for you to post some information and updates, some experiences. I think of these as kind of our stories on Instagram, if you will. So the ability to post to your storyline some of that information, a short video, and concepts, as well as some additional analytics that are found specific to Viva Engage. So Viva Insights might be able to show us some different types of analytics across our organization as it relates to well-being and teamwork. But then within the Viva Engage platform, still recognizing that it also has its own set of analytics that we can start to look through. So our network specifically, or our audience and personal, and unfortunately, because we've got that audience threshold that's required, that's where we're not quite seeing some of that analytics. But if we are interested in seeing some of that more built out, I'd be happy to provide some additional resources of what this can look like for your organization too. But then across the very bottom, we've got some communities. So multi-tenant community is one that we had set up. So we have discussion that's posted. So again, thinking about trying to relate it to some things that we're already more familiar with. It's a similar kind of concept and similar look to our Microsoft Teams posts within a Teams team and a Teams channel, right? We've got that post here across the top, and then we have that ability to reply to that thread, right? And we can continue to see those previous comments. We can react and comment and share. So that sharing piece, kind of where we start to see the difference. Also being able to see the scene count across the top. And then in the more actions, this is also some additional options that I have, both as an admin and as a user. So as an admin, I might be able to delete and close the conversation, whereas as a user, I have the ability to bookmark and copy the link and unfollow if I am following that person already. Across the right of the community section is where we can see that members and the pinned. And what I love is that we have multiple different ways to interact with that community. So it doesn't just have to be a discussion. We can also start a question, or we can praise someone who is a part of this community and also poll. So maybe this is our in office, and it's our entire team that goes into the office every day, or we have a specific group of people that are in the office every day. And so for that group, we create a poll that is lunch orders, right? And then we do a group lunch. So a variety of different ways we can start to interact with that community. As an owner of that community, you'll be able to upload a profile picture and a banner image or cover photo up at the top, and see some of those additional about categories, files, and events. So a lot of different ways we can see that Viva Engage is capable of further building out that Microsoft Teams team experience, of working alongside Microsoft Teams to provide additional capabilities such as that leadership corner, where we can have leadership activity dashboard of people that individual specifically seeks to follow and understand what concepts and things are important to them within the organization. As well as for their own individual profile of building out and understanding what they're capable of, or what users can start to reach out to them about. So it might be sharing certain Tech Tip Tuesdays, like I like to do, or being able to see some different badges and followed campaigns and the things that, once again, are really important to that individual or that team. The host me or hosting an ask me anything session is also one that I like to point out because it is one of the more prominent features that I think Viva Engage offers as opposed to some of the other tools. Having the ability to host that, especially as a leader, provides some additional transparency and visibility. So if you are someone who has been using Viva Engage a lot, would love to hear your specific use case for Viva Engage and what value you've been able to find with Viva Engage as opposed to maybe a Microsoft Teams channel, and why you would choose a Viva community as opposed to a team. And then with that, hopefully while we get some potential people offering some suggestions for that community piece, we'll also look at finally that Copilot sneak peek. So for Copilot specifically, we went ahead and looked at that Viva piece. But when we think about Copilot and the capabilities within those four tools, maybe that we started to look at, Engage is allowing us to be able to more effectively communicate with those communities. So as you saw when starting a conversation, it suggests conversation starters and helps you write and edit those posts based on your activity. And it even starts to look at those trending topics within your organization so that it can also help you to continue to contribute to some of those trending topics. For Viva Insights, you'll also see the Copilot dashboard, which is one that we saw when we first clicked into Copilot or Viva Insights. And that Copilot dashboard previously was available, from my understanding, was that premium license with Viva Insights. But since Copilot's rollout and continued growth, we're seeing that Copilot dashboard is readily available for organizations utilizing Copilot so that it can provide those actionable insights for organizations that are looking to continue to drive adoption and overall just measure the impact of Copilot. So that dashboard is offering metrics on Copilot's usage, showing its effect on productivity, and generates those personalized reports as well. And then lastly, Viva Learning is also one to highlight in that Copilot is curating and recommending some learning content specific for individuals' needs, as well as for your admins who are creating perhaps the OKRs within Viva Goals, those objectives and key results. You're seeing that within Viva Goals, but then also within Viva Learning, creating content or recommending content tailored to your individual needs. And as a whole, Viva Learning's goal, of course, is to make it easier for employees to grow in those careers. So then having Copilot come alongside that and recommending some of that content that's available to them only further heightens that ability. All right. And I wanted to make a point to leave some extra time at the end for any questions or comments that we might have. So thank you so much, Don, Michelle, and everyone who hopped on today. Privileged to share some of the information I have learned about Viva along the way.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maddy. Yeah, so it looks like we did have one question, and thanks for our other presenter for jumping in a little bit. I don't know if you have any insights to this one from Jason Hughes, but talking about having to enable admins to select Viva engaged communities, which ones are allowed to have guests rather an all or nothing type of scenario. I don't know if you've run across that with any of your customers, or even Michelle, if you remember that when you were dealing a lot with Viva, right? Engage. Think there's some conversation going on here, so just make sure that we're covering that.
Yeah, I'll let Maddy go first.
Yeah, I know that I full transparency, I haven't had a client looking to invite guests into their communities just yet. I do know that it is an option for you to be able to invite guests into those communities. and that those guest roles are going to be different, of course, than a traditional member within your environment. But for, I think of even just consultants um, or contractors that you'd be looking to still have insights into community or company-wide communications, that certainly is one of the capabilities of adding in those guest users. But I'd be curious specifically what the use case would be.
Yeah, and I guess my comment would be, as long as you are in native mode, which basically means you're leveraging the M365 group construct, then you can enable guest access. And that is controlled by group. So you do have all those controls. I think the question was, can you granularly control? Absolutely, because it's an M365 group. I'll go ahead. I'll put a link in when I find it, and I'll put it in our chat for everyone.
Yeah,
thanks for answering that. But the last I checked, I don't think that was possible. Which I don't know. That may have been a couple months ago. But
Okay.
well, the sensitivity labels weren't working, and I think somewhere in that documentation it did kind of say that as of right now, there's like a toggle in the admin settings for Viva Engage, and you can turn it on or off. But the last time I tried to monkey around with the group settings, I think it's still either allowed them or disallowed them. Somehow there's a disconnect between Viva Engage and some of those group settings and sensitivity labels and whatnot. So hopefully they'll get that figured out. But that's it would be a great tool, because right now what's happening is, we're having to default to private Facebook groups. So now we can't use, the internal tool for like vendors, customers. It would be nice if we could utilize that, but we have to control which communities they can access and which they can't. So that's where the question kind of came from.
Okay.
But thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Jason, I did find a link real quick on how you do collaborate using B2B inside of Viva Engage. And the requirement is you need to be in native mode, which I think most people are. I think that's been out for a really long time.
Yeah, we're in native mode.
Okay. Yeah, take a look again.
I'll look again, but I think there's also kind of a one thing I noticed for anybody else who looks at that, but it doesn't sound like it's a popular feature. There's kind of a couple Microsoft docs floating around where they kind of conflict with one another. One says certain things aren't available for Engage yet, and the other one says it is. And I did point that out on a support ticket, so hopefully they fixed that. But I don't know. There's still some. I think there's still a few bugs in there unless they fixed them in the last couple months.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a really nice feature to have. So hopefully someday.
Yeah, the 2 articles that I've just posted in the chat is from late September. So I think maybe if there was anything, that's the latest updates.
All right, I'll check again.
Okay, good luck.
Thanks, Michelle. Yep.
All right, Maddy, thank you so much. That was absolutely incredible. That was a great overview. And congrats on being an MVP. That is huge.
Mm-hmm.